Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with Kansas City veteran jazz saxophonist Doug Talley. This KC fixture on the scene is well-versed on the stage, studio, and in front of the classroom. His Doug Talley Quartet has been around since 1995 and has performed at numerous festivals, concerts, clubs, and schools throughout the Midwest. He has also performed with the likes of many icons like Jay McShann, Clark Terry, Bob Mintzer, Claude, Fiddler, Williams, Bobby Watson, and he just keeps on moving in that right direction. So please get to know Doug and dig this interview, my friends.
Doug, hey, thank you for taking a minute out. It's a pleasure. I know you're a very active cat on the KC scene, so it's great to catch up with you.
Well, it's good to have a chance to visit with you, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Wonderful. So let's go ahead and start off here. Give me an idea of what has been going on. I caught you the other night with Carolyn Glenn Brewer's book tour with Changing the Tune, and I know that you're usually pretty active with your group and out on the scene. So talk to me about what's going on.
Well, with Carolyn's project, she's the wife of the bass player who's in my quartet, Tim Brewer, and she's an active author. She's written several books, and she just thought that it'd be nice to have a live sort of a kickoff. It's been out for a few months, but she wanted an event, an official event that sort of captured the spirit of the book that has to do with the Women's Jazz Festival. And, it's not exclusively women. There are guys involved too, but the women were organizing and they wanted to, have plenty of women on the gig, and I think they did. There were 8 of us, and it was sort of a half and half type of thing, and it was a whole lot of fun. As a matter of fact, I'm really pleased that you were in the audience. That was really cool.
Yeah, it was a great show. In fact, I'm surprised of all the years that I've been around the city, I had never been downstairs in the Westport Coffee House to catch a show, and that's a great, quaint, nice little theater setup they got going.
It really is. He's got a good setup going there, and they've had that for some time, but it's sort of a semi-secret. If you're not, really, if you just kind of hit the clubs, then you don't know about it. So it's sort of that next level type of thing. Of course, you knew about it and all that, but a lot of people don't.
Well, the beauty, I think, whenever I talk to a lot of people from around the country when they allude to Kansas City, is that there are so many different venues that are here in this town, even small ones like that. Then you got big ones like Green Ladies. So there's a right jazz scene that's going on here, which is a good thing.
I agree, and I think each venue has a slightly different climate or a different atmosphere, and so it makes it interesting to play.
Absolutely. So you've been pretty active with putting out recordings. Do you have anything that is on the horizon that you're working on that you might want to plug?
I don't have anything that I want to plug. It's, the last thing that we did was the Wayne Shorter material, and so now we're turning back to looking at original stuff. With the Wayne Shorter CD, Wayne Hawkins was our piano player, and he'd been with us for over 15 years, and now we have a different piano player. Wayne moved to New York, and so we have TJ Martley. So we're kind of, and he fits in just great. He plays great, and he fits in great. And so we're kind of looking at original material, and then when we get a feel for what we want to record, we'll go ahead and do it. But I think, as far as down the line, we have 5 of them out, and we've done probably as many standards as we have originals, and it's time to turn back to originals.
Beautiful. So let me get back to the beginnings of your life here. You grew up in Kansas City, correct?
Yes, we moved here when I was, 6.
So how did you get into jazz? How did you get the bug?
Well, I'd heard jazz. My dad played jazz, on the record player at that time, and I got to hear a lot of Louis Armstrong, some Ella, and things like that. Rosemary Clooney. I remember hearing some Rosemary Clooney, not just pop stuff, but her, some of her jazz stuff too. And, then I was in public school band, and I heard the jazz band play, and I was a clarinet player. They were playing tunes that I wanted to play, so the director said that first I had to learn to play saxophone, and then I could try out for the jazz band. So my dad bought me a saxophone, and I tried to learn how to play it in time, but I didn't, so I didn't win that audition. But the following year, I finally got in the jazz band, and that was the big influence. And I had friends who were in the high school, in that high school band, who played jazz recordings. It's sort of a weird way to come into jazz, but as a sax player, the first recordings that I was familiar with, besides the ones my dad played, was Maynard Ferguson, which is not what you expect to hear a sax player say, But
yeah,
so that was a little bit different, but it was an appreciation for it, and friends I had in that band, were very much into it, and I think that sort of helped to suck me into it.
Let me ask you this: what do you like the best about Kansas City?
Oh man, I like just about everything about Kansas City. I like the atmosphere. I like the history of it. I like the history of the politics of it. I like the fact that Count Basie spent some time here, and Benny Moten and Mary Lou Williams. The history of jazz here is really rich. I like being able to go down to 18th and Vine and, not just go in the Blue Room, but just think about all the people who were there, over the years. I mean, that Blue Room is obviously different than the clubs that they had in the 30s. But, people were there, walking on those, the streets there, and, just trying to think about how wide open it was and, what was it really like to be a jazz musician 80 years ago.
So with that in mind, I'm going to piggyback off of that and ask you this. If you could go back down during that heyday and catch a live show, who would you see?
Of course, there's a bunch of them that I'd want to see, but if you pin me down to one, I'm pretty sure that I'd want to see Count Basie. I want to see Count Basie, in that old band that had Lester Young and Herschel Evans and all those guys.
Most of the time we're only as good as the shoulders we stand on. Talk to me about some of your mentors. Who's taught you the most about playing?
I had a high school band director that valued it, even though he didn't give me any private lessons or anything like that. I think part of it is the value that you impart on the younger people that goes a long way. So, I had good public school support. Ron McCurdy, who was a jazz professor, jazz teacher at KU, was a big influence. I never thought of him as being a huge influence because he wasn't a sax player, but he got me listening to the sax players like Dexter Gordon, who I ended up transcribing and, following and studying and all that. Even though he wasn't, I'm sure to him it was just, here's an assignment to give this kid, here, go listen to Dexter Gordon. But for me, it turned into something. And Rich Madison was one of my professors he was an amazing jazz euphonium player of all things. And he was at North Texas when I was there. And then, groups just around town of people who've taught me so many things. If you go out and play a gig, it's kind of like having, depending on the gig, it can be like having a lesson right there. You listen to the cats who are around you and you copy what you need, you borrow or steal or whatever you want to call it, and then learn from them. And they're, the guys in the Kansas City Jazz Orchestra, even, now, even though I'm all grown up, they're still very inspirational to me. When I sit in that section, I'm trying my hardest to sound good, and I'm learning from the way they're playing, and stealing ideas from them. So you don't ever stop learning, for sure.
Speaking of that, you play with a lot of people that have had a lot of mileage in their lives, like Jay McShann, Bobby Watson, Karin Allison, Randy Brecker. What did you learn from them? I guess this is a twofold question. What do you learn from people like that? And then in turn, what do you take from what you've learned to impart on people that look up to you that are younger?
Wow. Well, that's huge right there, because I'm so much into jazz education, and trying to spread the word and all that. The first time that I played with Jay McShann, I remember he called that old standard, All the Things You Are. And, I was this kid, I was in my 20s, my early 20s, I guess, early to mid-20s, and I thought, okay, I'll bet he's going to kick this off and it's going to swing really hard and we're going to burn. And it turns out that he played it as a ballad, and it changed my way of thinking, not only about that, but just about how mature musicians don't have to play fast and they don't have to play a lot of notes. They just have to make it make sense and work. Fiddler Williams, geez, I didn't even know I was going to be playing a gig with him, and then he showed up on the gig, and he had, you think of violin players and you think, well, this is going to be kind of gimmicky or something like that, and that's not the case. Fiddler Williams had all the vocabulary of a horn player and more, and articulated the same way. I mean, and when I played a couple of gigs with Fiddler Williams, and man, he changed my vocabulary a lot. I mean, I listened hard to him, and then went home and practiced some more to try to capture what I thought he was doing. And, you know, I never totally got there, but he pushed me in that direction. You know, it's not like either of those guys took me aside and said, hey, you need to know this, and this. It's just, I learned it because they were modeling it. That was their vocabulary, and that was their language. And I think any time that you get in on a gig and you're playing along with somebody who's doing something that you like, you really need to take that home and work on it a little bit. It's young people when they're learning to talk, you know, when they're just little kids, they learn to talk like the people, you know, who are in their house. And I think we need to do the same thing when we're jazz musicians, because that's where the vocabulary is. It's not on the page. Of course, you know, I could soapbox about that forever, but that's how I feel about it.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's great. I think that we do a lot of that learning by osmosis. I like that visual for sure. So, you know, in your career, you've had your quartet since '95. You perform with a lot of people. You've won awards. You got the 2010 Kansas Governor's Arts Award and other awards. You've had a long career as an educator. Tell me this. How do you feel about your career, everything that's happened up to this point as a jazz musician? Are you happy?
Oh, yeah. I'm really happy with it. I feel as though I'm just privileged to be able to perform and also to teach, because I think I've always wanted to do both. You know, so far I've been, you know, fairly successful at it. I mean, not everything comes my way that I want to, but there's certainly been plenty of opportunities and plenty of chances to take advantage of them. I don't get to spend enough time at either, I feel, you know, to be really at the top of my game, but I do feel like, you know, the quartet has gone a long way, and we've gotten a chance to do a lot of recording and a lot of playing and touring, and, you know, that's been pretty fulfilling, getting a chance to, you know, go out and take jazz to people. You know, at one time when we had the Kansas Arts Commission, we would tour on their roster, and we would get a chance to go out and take jazz to people who probably would not have heard it otherwise. Certainly not live, you know, in some rural areas or just areas where jazz isn't all that popular. And there are a lot of people who I think, you know, maybe we influence positively because of that. On the educational side, I get a chance to work with young people, you know, pretty much every day, and, you know, hopefully instill a love of music in them, even if it's not jazz. You know, at least it's something. It's the arts. It's the humanity, I guess, if you will, something like that.
So let me ask you this, generically. Why do you love jazz?
You know, it's like one of those things that I never thought about not loving it. You know, the sound of it, I guess, the freedom of it, the way that you can express yourself. And it's not like I don't love classical music, because I really do. I do get a chance to play with Kansas City Symphony from time to time when they're doing a pops. And that's amazing because the level of musicianship on the stage is just ridiculously good. I mean, those guys are amazing. But they're still, even when I'm playing with them, and it's like the best gig in town, it seems like, when I go back and play jazz, there's still a freedom there that I don't get otherwise. You know, jazz has a lot of improvisation in it. You can express yourself, and it's not like you can't express yourself with other musics, because you can. I mean, that's what music is. But the interaction, I think, is at a higher level with that type of music. You know, we can just play and not let a bunch of things get in the way, not let a bunch of pieces of paper get in the way. You know, reading a bunch of music, reading's great, but it's not where the freedom is. I guess that's why I like jazz. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. Everyone has a version of you, your family, your friends, your students, those that are in the crowd watching you play. But when you face your day and you wake up, who are you? Who do you think you are?
Oh man. Well, let's see. I think when I wake up, I'm a dad and a husband. I think, yeah. I think I think that's where I am. I think, that there's different hats that go on at different times of the day. And sometimes I'm good at switching the hats and sometimes I'm not as good. But, so what a great question. And I wish I had a great answer for you. I think I changed throughout the day. So,
that answer was a good answer. So let me ask you this, my final question for you. You know, Kansas City has such a rich history of musicians and has such a rich history of jazz, and you're definitely woven into the tapestry of that. When the people in jazz and in this town peel back the layers of the players that have been here and come across your name, how do you want to be remembered?
I think I probably will be remembered as an educator. Probably that's kind of the pigeonhole that they'll put me in. But I hope that it won't just be that. I hope that it will be either an educator who could play and contribute to the music scene itself, or maybe vice versa, maybe a musician who could contribute to the music education scene. You know, I would be very happy and honored if I fit one of those two labels.
Very good. Hey, Doug, that's all I got. Thank you for taking some time out, opening up about your music, opening up about your life in jazz. I appreciate it.
Well, it was great visiting with you. I hope we'll cross paths again soon.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to yet another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Kansas City, Portland, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Doug for his time, his stories, and his honesty. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit Neon Jazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.